Hello? What are you doing there? Oh no! Is spring break over already? I was just enjoying my time at the beach. Oh well. I guess we have to start class again then. So, what's the topic today? How to write a CV and resume. Ooh, stunning topic. Well, me and this. Suppose I should be in a more appropriate attire. There. Much nicer. So, where were we? Ah, yes, resumes. So, what we want to do right now is go over some of the information provided to us by the Griff Center on the differences between a resume and a CV and when you should use each. So, what is a resume? A resume is a 1 to 2 page document that describes your education, your experience, and your skills relative to the job that you are applying for. As a result, for any job you apply for, you should specialize your resume to best match your skills with those requirements listed in the job description. In many cases, that resume will only be on the person's desk for a matter of minutes to even seconds. And so it has to convey the information very quickly. And there can't be a whole lot of time spent searching around in a document. In the case of resumes, you want them to be short and simple, just having your experience in case of employment, including all information and contact, location, etc. for those employers. Second, you will also want to include your education, particularly if the education is relevant to the position that you are hoping to gain. Next, you'll want to include things like your relevant skills, anything that you've done that matches up with the job description for the advertisement. Other tips for resume are to first proofread. Make sure it's as clean as possible. Second, choose some type of ivory or white paper. Create an attractive heading that will go through and catch the reviewer's attention. Use 10 to 12 point font in some type of non-decorative font, such as Times New Roman, Cambria, or Helvetica. Always use bulleted lists rather than paragraphs. If you have a long string of text, there's a good chance that the person reading it won't take the time to read it fully and completely. Be all or nothing about punctuation. Either put a period at the end of every bullet point or don't. Just make it consistent. Keep in mind as you're doing this, the person looking at all the resumes is looking for reasons to not take this one. Make sure what you are doing is going to catch the eye and demonstrate your qualifications for the job. The CV is something very, very different. The CV stands for Curriculum Vitae and is essentially a document that will go through and detail all of your experiences and all of your education, and is a more holistic document that will sort of explain you. So when would you use a CV versus a resume? If you're applying for many jobs, that CV would be a little bit overboard. However, for certain fields, such as in academia, whenever you're looking to move to an international job, or if you're applying to medical school positions or residencies, then the CV is the form that you want to be able to provide. It provides a holistic view of all of the skills that you possess and is generally used when the company that's looking has a broad view of what they want to see and they want to get a holistic view of that person. So that sounds a little bit intimidating, especially if you're still 19 or 20 and you feel that maybe you don't have enough stuff to put in a CV. Well, what we're going to cover today is to go through and take a look at what goes into a CV, how do you put it together, and why would that be useful? So the first thing to include in your CV is going to be your contact information. This will include your address, a phone number by which that company can contact you, and finally, a professional email address. This is the kind of email address that basically has your name and initial in there. The next piece of information that you'll want to include on your resume is going to be your education. Another thing to include on your CV is going to be awards and honors that you may have received. These are typically viewed from an academic sense, things that will go through and be relevant towards a job that you are going for. Most likely to succeed in high school probably doesn't fit the bill, but any dean's list or honors that you have gotten through the college probably does count. The next thing that you'll want to include is going to be any type of relevant experience you have for the position that you are applying for. This could be things like skills, or this could be things like work experience. In terms of experience, you should include all forms of relevant experience, including paid internships, volunteer positions, or other forms of employment that would be relevant for the position that you are applying to. In the case of medical fields, this may include things like shadowing. You should also include any teaching experience you have. This includes being a TA or a tutor over at the tutoring center. It's really valuable to include research experience. This includes any research experience you may have had by working with a professor or through any type of summer research experience you may have had. REUs are a really useful way of going through and gaining research experience and should certainly go on. Another great thing to have on your CV is any type of experience you have giving presentations. This includes giving presentations over Ignatian Scholarship Day or at a conference that you may go to with your research mentor. In addition, include any other skills that you may have that will be relevant for the position you're applying. You should also include any types of licenses or certifications that you've acquired, especially if they're relevant for the position that you're hoping to apply to. If you have any professional affiliations, you should definitely include those next. Another great thing to include at this early stage is going to be things like campus activities, especially if you played a leadership role. It definitely shows a leadership potential. So you might be asking yourself here as a college student, what have I done that really is worth going onto a CV? Well, let's think about it. What about my fieldwork from last summer? Yes, if you have some type of field research experience that you may have gotten, that would be very valuable to put on there. What about my shadowing at the clinic? What about my work at the coffee shop? Absolutely. Any type of employment experience that you have would certainly be something to put on the CV. It shows a level of responsibility. And what about all the classwork I've done? Why, yes, in some cases, specific college classes might be useful to put on your CV, but usually only in cases where the college class directly would be applicable to the type of position that you're applying to. So, for example, if you did a class that was very heavy in liquid chromatography and you're going to a lab that does a lot of liquid chromatography, then that would certainly be something to put on there. However, if you just took biochem, I wouldn't necessarily suggest putting something like that on. As you're going through and preparing this document, you're going to have to think about what order to put these in. The order in which you put the information is going to be determined in part by your own strengths and also in part by the nature of the position you're applying to. Additional considerations besides simply the order at which you list materials. Quite often with the resumes, they say you want to go through and balance just the right amount of white space versus text. For CVs, this is usually a little bit less important. It's usually about the information that you've provided that is important and less about the manner or style in which you present it. However, that said, are a couple things that you'll want to keep in mind. The first is to be clear. Make sure that your words are descriptive but aren't overly flowery. You want to convey the information as quickly as possible. That brings us to our next idea, is to be concise. Be straightforward in what you have done, and especially highlighting those pieces and skills that best match you for the position that you are hoping to apply for. In the case of a CV, you also want to be complete. Yes, you may have gone through and done quite a bit, and in some cases, you may have some employment you did, say working as a lifeguard back in high school. From a CV's perspective, that's still a useful thing to put on. In the case of your CV, as you're preparing it, also be consistent. By being consistent, I mean whenever you go through and create one level of format within one section, make sure you maintain that formatting across all sections. One of the easiest things to do is to prepare one of these and then walk away for a while. As I've talked to students about the assignment, quite often they say, "Oh, hey, I have a resume that I had 2 years ago. I'll just use that." But here's the thing, that's not necessarily the best way to go about things because you've done a lot of things since then. In addition, it's best to go along and constantly update your CV or resume as you go, to keep a list of that skills and information so that when you come to the point where you need it, you don't have to do a whole lot of searching for names and dates and locations and addresses. You'll have it all there and ready to go when you need it. Last but not least, certainly check for spelling and grammar. Nothing will go through and sour someone's view of your CV or resume faster than the wrong use of then or than. Keep in mind the person looking at this has a big stack of them, is looking for reasons to put them aside. Make sure what you put on your CV or your resume will keep that person's attention and convince them that you are the person for the job. So, I hope that helps. Whether you're planning to go to the boardroom, to the research field, to the clinic, to the office, double espresso. I'm sure that the CV and resume that you prepare using this information will ensure that you get the position you're looking for. But, well, and for me, back to the beach.